Alright, getting started playing multiplayer in Age of Empires 4. So I'm going to go through how to set yourself up from the very beginning. So you're building good habits, and most importantly, you're not going to be embedding bad ones. I myself have played RTS games for like 15, 20 years. I still have some really, really fucking awful habits, which I'm just honestly probably never going to change at this point. So hopefully I can help people avoid my mistakes that I made. An easy journey into playing RTS games, Age of Empires 4 in particular, and then hopefully that helps you to improve a bit more quickly, a bit more easily, a bit more efficiently. So we're going to go through how to best set yourself up. So that's going to be settings, your hotkeys, and we're going to go through some habits in game as well. So I'm going to go through a bunch of suggestions. These are primarily for brand new players to Age of Empires 4, particularly multiplayer, or for casual players looking to sort of bridge that gap into RTS games and Age of Empires in general. Particularly people who have come across, from other games where you generally just use like the left side of the keyboard, rather than using the whole of the keyboard, which RTS games traditionally have done. Not looking to reinvent the wheel here. I'm just going to make some suggestions for hotkeys, which will be hopefully somewhat familiar to you. And again, mostly just using the left side of the keyboard. But also I'm going to point out a bunch of stuff which I think is just largely personal preference. And I'll point out as we go where I think it's personal preference and where I really think you should follow my suggestions. So we'll go through all the settings first, and then we'll jump into game and go through a bit of implementing or executing that, as well as some habits and all the tricks and stuff you can do to be more efficient in game. So let's jump into the settings. I'll come back to controls actually later, because that's probably the biggest one. We'll start off with camera. So with camera, the biggest thing here, and again, a lot of these settings I'm not actually going to go through. If I'm not going through them, just sort of set them to what your preference is. A lot of things like speed are just personal preference. The ones I'm going to talk about are the ones that are probably more impactful. So the only one really in camera here is whether you have classic or panoramic mode. Panoramic is more zoomed out. Kind of think of it as like a greater field of view, and the angle's a bit different. I personally use classic, though I think for new players, panoramic is probably actually better. Well, I think for anybody, it's probably better. But the reason I use classic a lot, you'll see a lot of streamers or pros use classic, is because that's all that the game came out with at the start, and we were too stubborn to change to panoramic when it came out. But it's personal preference. You're never going to lose a game because of your camera mode. Pick whichever feels better for you. Games. There's a couple here. First of all, player colors, have it unique is good. Box select, smart is important to make sure it's on, but that is default. Few here. First one being right click Garrison for buildings. This is on by default, I believe, but I recommend turning it off. What this does is that when you have your units selected, if you right click on a garrisonable building, like a TC or outpost, if you right click on it, that'll garrison. If you have this off, then you need to press the hotkey, by default F, and then left click on the building to garrison. I find I just garrisoned by accident too many times, which is far more of a faff. So I find greater control by having it off and using the F key, so I recommend that. Show waypoint markers for single actions. This is personal preference. It just means if you shift Q actions, a bunch of commands for a unit, it'll show where they're going to go. This one is just if you do a single action. So if you just right click to move, is it going to show the line of where that unit you're controlling is going? I like it, but it's personal preference. Queued command, I think gathering is better than construction. An attack move, this one's personal preference, but I would recommend default if you're new to RTS games. Legacy maybe if you've been playing them a lot. Basically the difference is default is if you attack move and click on something, so press A and then left click on a unit or a building or something, it'll treat it as though you you press the attack move command on the ground. So it'll just do attack the highest priority target next to your units. If you have it on Legacy, if you press A left click on a unit, it'll act as though you right click that unit. So it'll only attack that unit. Where this becomes an issue is twofold. One, if you're in the base and there's like a bunch of farms and houses around and you're trying to A move the ground, but there's nowhere to click on the ground, and then you accidentally click on a farm, and now all your archers are shooting the farm when you want them to shoot units which is where you should have it on default. But the other one is sometimes when you're microing with archers and you want to A left click a unit, and if God forbid you missed a unit, at least you hit the ground, in which case they'll just attack, which can be really helpful. Otherwise, you actually need to use right clicking to select units when you're kiting with archers to attack, and if you misclick with a right click, your units will walk towards them instead, which could be terrible for your archers. So it's pros and cons to both, personal preference. I actually use default, but I really don't think it makes a big difference. All right, UIs, construction, health bars and stuff on. It's good. Game duration time, I think it's off by default, but turn it on. It's good to know how long you've been in the game for timers and the like. Show pinned play information, I recommend on. Especially for team games, it's nice to know, but the thing that's most important or helpful with this is that it will tell you what civ your opponents and your teammates are playing, which is useful to have that information. Global build queue, have that as all. It shows in the bottom left everything that you're making or upgrading, which is, I think, really helpful. Minimap size, this is a little bit personal preference, but I would just say have it as large as is comfortable for you on the size of your monitor. I have a 27-inch monitor. Largest, I think, is great. If you have a smaller monitor, maybe larger or largest, depending on your preference. But having a big minimap is important because you always want to be looking and training yourself to look at the minimap. I personally don't do it as much as I should, even playing as much as I have. So having it bigger is good. All these on is good. Condensed victory objectives, if you're brand new, you might want to have this off to start with because it does make them quite a bit smaller in the top left corner. But yeah, not a big deal. Graphics, entirely up to you what you can best run. Yeah, turn VSync off. Otherwise, everything is just sort of, yeah, what you can run. I will say with this, sometimes with RTS games, you'll see players turn their graphics down to have more visual clarity in the game. You really don't need that with Age of Empires 4. If you can run high settings, run them. The game's gorgeous. It's fantastic. Audio, normally I wouldn't talk about audio when it comes to settings for optimizing a game, but I will say for this, Age of Empires 4's sound design is fucking amazing. So turn the quality up as high as you can, and then whatever dynamic ranges best suits you. But honestly, sound quality is amazing. If you don't believe me, take a bunch of knights or something and have them stampede across the map and charge into your enemy. Zoom in while you do it, and then the sound of the horses running or galloping, and then the brace and the charge it's fantastic. It's like nothing else. Online accessibility, there's nothing here. I have voice chat and everything turned off, so I don't know. Accessibility, obviously, you just use what you need, really. There's really not too much more to say about that. So let's jump into controls. This is where all the big stuff is. So we'll go down actually to the general settings before we jump into the sort of remappable keys. Sticky selection off. This is awful. It just means when you left click the ground, it doesn't deselect, which I don't know why you would ever want that. Swap shift and alt. Nope, don't need to swap them. Exclusive control groups. Okay, this is personal preference. I recommend if you're unsure, have it on. Some players really, especially players that play a long time, like it off. It is personal preference. If you're unsure, I recommend on. These next ones are kind of weird, and I'll explain a little bit in a couple of places how I do things and what I recommend. I see there's two ways of doing this. So basically what happens with a lot of these buttons is whether when you press the hotkey for it, so in this case a hotkey for an idle villager, are you going to follow that unit, which you never want, but you could, the second and third options are viable. So the second one is when you press the hotkey, it'll select the unit and it will also take your camera over to it. The third one is just select. So your camera stays wherever it is. I personally use select only, as you can see, and that's because I use this option here, which is focus on selected units, to be my centering button. So I have that on spacebar. So basically what I do is I press one button to select a unit and another button to focus on it, or spacebar to focus on it. Alternatively, I think that's one way of doing it. Maybe it's a bit more complicated, but I think it gives me greater control. The other way to do it is you just have these all on select and center camera, and that way when you press the button, it'll just go to it. You don't need to press spacebar or anything else. That's simpler. I probably recommend that. Me personally, I just do it this way by having an extra button of pressing space. For the last option, Command Q mode, end on release is better than classic. So we're scrolling back up and going into the mappable controls. So let's go through. First of all, there are two options, grid keys and fully remappable. Fully remappable gives you more customization. It's fantastic. But like I said, I think I want to keep this as basic as possible and don't change too much. Don't reinvent the wheel. So grid keys is totally fine. All right. So going through game, there's not too much in here. The one that's most important is focus on last attack notification. This is spacebar by default. You don't need to use this key. Spacebar is a great key to use for something. I use it for focus. If you're not going to use it for focus, use it for something. But you do not need it for focus on last attack notification. It's kind of a bait button to use because it's not going to be very consistent. Other than that, I don't think I change anything here. So we'll skip ahead. Units. So this is a big one. So I'm going to go through the ones which I think are important to have hotkeys for, and then try to skip over some of the other ones which aren't so important. Select all units. The default hotkeys for these are shit, by the way. So I do I can't remember exactly what they are. I'm not going to go through it, but they're pretty bad. So I do change them. Control A is a useful one for select all units, and I'll show you why select all units I think is a useful hotkey when we get into the game. But it's kind of like in word processing, control all or control A to select all. So I use the same one again. Select all units on screen. I don't ever use, so don't worry about it. Cycle through units, tab and control tab for sure. That's on by default. I've got my focus on space button here. Caps lock for cycle through idle economics. This is an important one to have hotkeyed, cycling through idle economic units. I use caps lock. I think using caps lock for a hotkey is really, really useful. It become a little bit annoying when you next go to type, but it's a button on the left side of your keyboard that's big, really easy, accessible. I recommend using it for something. I use it for this. So this could be a good option for spacebar if you're not using that for the focus button. But that's an important one. Select all villages, no. Select all idle villages is important. So this is something that I do use with a couple of things. Is I do to cycle through idle vills, I'll press caps lock. To select all idle vills, I'll press control caps lock. I think that's just an easy way for me to think about it, and it keeps things nice and easy. And I think the control modifier is pretty easy to press, and you do it for stuff like control groups, so it just sort of makes sense to me. Cycle through idle villages and radius, I don't use that at all. Cycle through villages gathering food, wood, gold, and silver, stone. These are actually really useful. And I do recommend using it. These are here by default. I'll go into them when we get into game, but you don't need to change anything here. Cool. So the next one, cycle through individual religious units. This is a really important hotkey. I do recommend having one. I have it on F4. F4 by default is can't remember, but something else that's shit. It's all landmarks or something. But I think I recommend using this because for your monks picking up relics, and you can sort of cycle through them easily, and it saves you having to put them on control groups, which gets a little bit messy. Next one, don't really care until we get to military units, select all and select all idle. So select all military units is quite a controversial one. Some people will tell you, it's like the F2 key in StarCraft. It's like just select all army. Some people will tell you not to use it, as it can be a bit of a panic button or can train bad habits, where you end up relying on it as a crutch, and you go select all army and then you might move their base, or you're getting attacked and you select all army and you then try to defend your base, but you've got horsemen on the side raiding who are then being pulled back. You've got spearmen defending your gold, which then go out of position. You know, your army's all over the place across the map, and you've just if you just actually had a bit more discipline with your control groups, you would have been fine. But for new players, I actually do recommend using it. I think it's good to have that panic button. The only caveat is use it with restraint. Do try to use control groups first and add things to your control groups, like your reinforcements and the like, and keep your raiding units on separate hotkeys, etc. But I think it's good to have that panic button where things can get too much, which in RTS games is, it happens. So I have that on the tilde button. I don't know if it really shows. I kind of have an interesting thing where I use a UK keyboard and a New Zealand keyboard, so that kind of messes this up a little bit because it's different on each. But I use the tilde button or the button to the left of the 1 key. I highly recommend this button for something. I use it for this because I want to be always getting in there. And I'll show you, actually I use that button for sort of, I use select all military for something else as well. But for unit management, not just as a panic button. So I'll show you that when we get in game, but I think it's a useful key. The next one is select all idle. So again, the control modifier and then tilde again. Select all idle is a good one to have. One, you don't have the panic issue, where you're going to send units that are doing something, doing something, to then go do something else accidentally. And it means also your reinforcements. So your rally point, your reinforcement going to be sitting on the rally point, and then you can just select them to come join your army or go do whatever it is, defend or something. Select all naval military. I think this is actually a useful hotkey, but I don't really use it. I have it on Shift tilde or Shift D. I never use it. I don't play water maps that much though, but yeah, so I wouldn't worry about it too much, but it is probably in theory a good one to have. Next one, cycle through individual scout units. So I have this on F5. This one is less important than the religious one. I also have it on my mouse button, actually. I forgot to mention that. Mouse 3, I think it is, or it just says mouse 5, but basically the thumb button, which I think is another good hotkey to use. Not as important, but cycling through your scouts can be good. If you play Roost and you have 2 scouts, sometimes it's really useful, but otherwise sometimes it can be good when you're using your control groups for your armies and you've got a couple of them and you don't want your scout to be on a control group, then it can be helpful in that sense, but it's not a big one. And then all the other ones, now all these like select all ranged infantry, select all cavalry, some people use these. I think they're a trap. I don't recommend it. Just keep it simple and use hotkeys. Use control groups rather than using those hotkeys. Building selection. Don't need to change too much here. F1, F2, F3, these are here by default. Select all military production, select all economy, select all technology. I do recommend keeping this, and I'll go through them again in the game, that using these keys. I do think they're actually useful. The biggest one here that a lot of players use is H for cycling through your town center. And you can do this if you want. I recommend using a control group. So I use control group 4, and I'll talk about that once we get in. But if you want to use H, it's fine. But I actually recommend using a control group rather than using the cycle through town centers hotkey. Focus on cannonball town city. You don't need this. And then everything else I recommend not using. Some people really like using the select all stables, archery range, barracks, etc, etc. I actually don't recommend using these. I have it on blacksmith. I don't actually use that, but there is a. I'm not going to go into it. There is a way you can, these settings can interact with your control group, so you can sort of have this as a bit of redundancy. So if you have, say you want to put all your barracks on 5, then you could have this as 5 as well, and then if you don't have them hotkeyed, it will still select the barracks, yada yada. But I don't recommend it. I think it's better to use the control groups, and I'll show you that when we get in game. And there's nothing else here that's particularly useful. Control groups all default. So we're going to use 1 through 0 for going to them. We're going to select them by pressing the numbers, double tap to go to them. To make a new group, we're going to press Control. To add to the group, we're going to press Shift, and then the other part to remove units we don't care about. Communication, camera, observer, replay. There's nothing to change in here. I've got some stuff that's slightly changed for the way I observe, just for observing reasons, but you don't need to do anything there. And I think that's it for these hotkeys. So, with that said, take a breath, and then we'll jump into game and go through some of those habits. So we'll do that in a sec. You start the game, you're going to make a villager. You're going to put your villagers on food, and you're going to take your scout. In my case, I've pressed the scout hotkey, but you can literally just click them and then send them to go across the map. Now, already, what are we doing? We want to hotkey the things that we're going to use already, and we hotkey as we go. In this case, you want to put whatever hotkey you're going to use on each TC. I recommend using 4. So I use 1, 2, and 3 for army. I use 4 for all town centers. I use 5 for all production. I use 6 for my monastery. Or if I'm on a water map, I'll use 6 for docks. And then I don't use 7 and 8. 9, I use blacksmith, but I don't think you should. And 0, I use for market. I basically use 1 through 6 because that's as big as my hand can reach on the keyboard. I have relatively small hands. If you can reach further, if you can reach to 7 or God, impressive 8, use those. If not, you might want to use something else. When I press Control 9 or Control 0, I will use both my hands and I'll go Control 9, Control 0. Not ideal, not optimal, but I do it because my hands are small and it's the way I've always played. But again, if you've got a better idea for those, I would recommend doing something else. Alright, so I use 1 for scout, so I'm going to hit double tap 4 to go to my TC. Double tap 1 to go to my scout. Double tap 4 to go TC. Double tap 1 to go to scout. Now, for the most part, you don't need to come back to your TC for doing a lot of things. So I'm mostly just looking at my scout. My TC is I just press 4 and then press Q if I need to queue up a villager. I don't need to go look back at my base. In fact, it's important kind of that I don't go looking somewhere if I don't need to go looking somewhere. So we're just going to go and focus on the scout as much as we can. Now I've just realized I need a house. I'm going to press double tap 4 to go back to my base. I'm going to left click 1 villager, and I'm going to press QQ because that's a hotkey for house. And I'm going to go build it by left clicking the ground, and then I'm going to shift right click back on to the sheep, so they come back. Hear that sound? My scout has found a sheep. I'm going to go back and look at my scout. Double tap 1. And now I'm sort of looking around. Now I want to make sure this guy's running around when I'm not doing stuff, or I'm not looking at him. So I can click on the minimap, and he'll do that. And I can even do that while I'm not looking. So if I press 1, I've selected my scout. You can see it in the bottom left. I can actually control on the minimap without being there. So you see he's running up now. He can run to the left. And I can also shift Q, so I can go down here and then shift right click down to the bottom corner of the map. And he's going to go all the way down there without me even having looked at him, which is fantastic. Which gives you an extra level control, so you can be controlling but also looking somewhere else at the same time, which is useful in a lot of ways. We may as well put some units on gold, or some villages on gold, since that's what we're going to be doing in a real game anyway. So what we can do is either we can rally straight out there, or we can take one of our villages and we're going to build a mining camp. Now, when you're new, you're going to gravitate towards coming down here with the mouse, clicking the mining camp, pan dragging to get to where you want, and pressing left click. That's fucking awful. Please, especially in the early part of the game, when you have the time available to you, don't do that. Really train yourself as best as possible to use hotkeys and just build the habit, build the habit, build the habit. Even if it's uncomfortable, it's just going to pay off so worth it in the long run. So, I'm going to take 1. We're going to press Q to get into our building tab. And then we're going to press R because that's mining camp. It's the same for every civ, by the way. And we're going to left click on the mining camp. Now, say we actually want to send 2 more villagers there. I'm going to go click 1 villager. I'm going to shift left click another villager. And then I'm going to right click onto the gold. And that way, they're going to go over there as well. I could have put them on the mining camp and then they would have automatically gone onto gold as well. In that instance, doesn't really matter. Now, we see you got a lot of idle villagers here. We want them to do something. We can put them on wood. So one way is when you have a lot of villagers who are done with the resource. Say these guys want to go back. They're like, we finished with the sheep, but now they need to go on berries. We can get them all. So we can either box click them because they're on our screen, or we can use the idle villager keys that we used, that we set up. So if I press caps lock, which is my idle villager key, it'll select 1. If I press caps lock again, it'll select another. If I press control caps lock, which is what I set up for all idle villagers, it'll select them all. Then I can create, put them on the berries. Now I could right click the berries and now go to the berries, but they won't have a mill to drop them off at. So I'm actually just going to make the mill. So I'm going to go Q, W for mill, and I'm going to select it there. And now I don't even need to shift right click onto the berries. The AI knows that they're going to want to gather food. So they're going to gather the closest food resource, which in this case is berries. So as soon as they do this, you're off to work. Now, they don't do it the most efficiently. Like, they're all on the same berry patch. Early game, I mean, you could be more efficient by doing stuff like this. But only ever bother with that in the early game. Later on, it doesn't. It's not worth the investment. Next, queue up more villages. I actually didn't explain how to do it, but I just pressed 4 Q. I didn't move to my TC at all because I don't need to. I can make villages over here. And I just want to double tap 4 to come back. This villager, he's on wood, but again, there's no lumber camp nearby, so I'm going to go QE, left click, and again, I don't need to do anything. He'll go back to wood once he's done. Rallied onto wood, they'll start chopping wood as they go. I'm going to build a house, so that's QQ, and then I'm going to shift onto the wood. Nice and simple, nice and easy. This feels so fluid once you get used to it. And it really is important to like build the habit so that you're doing this part really efficiently. And again, like I said, the early game, there's nothing going on, so you can be efficient. And then what happens is you start seeing pros doing a lot of like jumping around all this shit, and it's just using hotkeys. It's just using hotkeys. I'll explain one of the things about my focus key just while we're here. So I have, let's take a couple idle villages. I put spacebar in focus, and I don't, when I press like the idle villager button, it doesn't take me back. So I'm pressing all the idle villager button 100 times. It's just going between the villages and not going back. If you have that on to center camera, it'll go to them. I have it on spacebar, so I press control to get the idle villager and I hit spacebar. To focus, control again, spacebar, control again, spacebar. It's an extra key. I like it because it gives me that extra control, but again, you can do what you want. I'm going to do control, caps lock to send them back. Lovely, lovely. Cool. Okay, so let's get into control groups and making units. So I talked about all production being on the same hotkey. This is something that not a lot of players necessarily do, and probably not optimal, but it's definitely simpler. And I think for new players coming out, it's better because it saves you. It means fewer control groups. It means you can keep your hand on the left and free up some keys for other stuff. So basically, actually, we need to get to feudal age. So I'm going to press T, which is age up, and now you can press Q or W to get the landmark of your choice. I'm going to press Q for council hall. I actually click. That's the one part actually in this game where I click. So I press T and then I click the one I want. It's actually a bad habit. It's not a big deal. The reason why put the cheat on. The reason why I do it that way is because the hotkey didn't exist when the game first came out. They're done with berries already. Alright, let's take them over here and put them on new berries. I'm going to go to my scout, bring that fruit back home. And I'm going to take... Oh, idle, just did it that quickly. Caps lock, spacebar, take me to these guys. We need houses because we're population blocked. So I'm going to go QQ, and then I'm going to shift left click, and they just go into auto. And I can shift right click to wood, and now go to wood. Oh, right, I've got the thing on. Let's turn that back on. Okay, so we're going to make some... I'm going to make a barracks, and I'm going to make a stables. And I'm going to show you the hotkey. So, there are two ways to do production. One is have everything on one hotkey, which is what I'm recommending. So, you take them all, and then you press Control 5 or Shift 5 to add them to the hotkey. When you do this, excuse me, the order in which they come up in the pane is the way in which you've selected them. So right now it's council hall, barracks, stables. If I go barracks and do that as the control group, and then go council hall and then go stables, it'll change the order. If I go council hall, then stables, the barracks, every time I press 5, that'll be the order. So you can choose, which is kind of useful. But it can kind of be a little bit annoying in that you might not have them in the order that you want them to be. So you might have to rearrange them during the game, which is a little bit inefficient, but I think it's kind of worth it. The other way of selecting all these buildings is to press the F1 key. F1 selects all military production buildings. F1 takes them all. I recommend using the 5 key. You could actually set up the 5 key by pressing F1 and then pressing Control 5, and that'll set them up. And put them on the 5 key, and then you never have to press F1 again. But I think this is a good way of doing it. Now, how does this work? So, when you have them all selected, you'll see here you've got all, and then you've got each individual building. When you first press 5, it'll take you to all. And then if you press tab, it'll take you to the individual buildings. Council hall, barracks, stables, all. Council hall, barracks, stables, all. When you have all, it's going to give you a selection of units, prioritizing the first one in the queue. So in this case, that is the council hall. So it's going to have longbowmen on queue. If we change it up and I put the barracks first, and now press 5, it'll have spearmen. And then men and arms. If I change it again, I got stables, men, archery range, then barracks, I press 5, horsemen at first. So it does it based on the order. What you're going to want to do is basically every time you press 5, you're going to want to tab into the one that you want. Because you're not going to be sure all the time which is going to be first in the queue. It's always probably a good rule of thumb to tab in. So I'm going to press 5 tab. Alright. Stables, make a horseman. Council hall, make an archer. Barracks, make a spearman. And then I can go off and do whatever I want. That's the way I recommend doing production. That way you've got one hotkey, you've got one rally point, you've got everything in the group. Nice and simple, nice and basic, super easy. It's a little bit of tabbing and a little bit of making sure you've got the order of the buildings. That's the downside, but otherwise it's pretty useful. The other way of doing it is to have everything on a different hotkey. You have barracks on 5, archery range on 6, stables on 7. My hands aren't big enough for this, but the advantage is you don't have to press any tabbing, and all the units, when you press the button, the hotkey, you know exactly what units are going to be selected. No tabbing through. It is personal preference. Again, I recommend having them all on one hotkey, but to each their own. In terms of the actual units themselves, I recommend having 3 control groups. So obviously 4 is when we start the buildings with the town center. So 1 through 3, I think you should use for army. So 1, I put on my scout for the start of the game, and if you have 2 scouts, 2 is the other one. And then 1 sort of becomes cavalry or melee. So I would go and put these guys in one group. And then I usually have archers in the second group. And then my third group is a little bit ad hoc based on what I need. So it might be spearmen, or it might be siege, or it could be scholars or healers, or honestly it could be an extra group where actually I want these guys, I want to go raiding, so they're going to be on number 3. I'm going to have my spearmen as my melee frontline on 1, and I'm going to have my archers on 2. And that's going to be the way I do it. Make some houses. It doesn't really matter as long as you're just sort of using the 3. Or up to the 3. You don't have to use all 3 at once. And often if you're using a whole, death wall across the map, you actually just want to chuck them all on 1. And then they all go in formation and move together. And then you can sort of change it as you go. Oh, I'm going to fight outside this base. I want my archers to pick them off. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my archers in a hotkey now. I can do that by either pressing... There's a few ways. I can double click the archers and hit Control 2. I can control click the archers and press Control 2. Or I can, out of this selection, go to this army pane at the bottom and control click the one I want. Longbowmen, that'll select all of them, and press Control 2, and now I can use them. That's a really handy way of doing it. And like I said earlier, is where one of the buttons I think is really useful is the all army hotkey. So if I want to attack, all out attack, I can go all army hotkey and press A click here. Oh, and the units I had back at the base also come with me because they're all army as well. Even if maybe I didn't want to. So one way we can sort of get a little bit more control behind this is use the all army hotkey, but then come in here is to check the units we want. Maybe we're like, oh, not quite sure, we want all our cavalry to go for a raid. We can use all army hotkey. Oh, I'm just going to take my horsemen. Control 1, let's put them on the hotkey, and then let's send them on their way. So we've used the all army hotkey to select specific units. Rather than moving all our units at once, but that's the key we're using for it. The other thing we do is now that our horsemen are on the run and they're doing their business, they're busy, but we've got idle units. So if I go Control tilde, and I'm going to press space to focus on them, this is all what were all my idle units. So my rally point, my guys just chilling at the rally point, and they can now go. Oh, I can control them to go now do whatever it is that they want, which is another quite a handy one. Yeah, whether you're double clicking, using the pane, control clicking, it's kind of preference. I'm not going to get too wound up about the way you choose to do that, but it is good to sort of experiment a little bit with how you want to do it. Definitely use hotkeys, at least the up to the 3 hotkeys. When you get in the heat of battle, you don't need to be doing everything by hotkey. Sometimes you might just want to like click the longbowman, so I've control clicked there and then move them around, and like maybe they won't be hotkeyed. You might want to do some box clicking for these units to move them, or these ones to go there. It's all fine. You'll find the best way to do it, but yeah, do use the hotkeys as best you can. Cool. The other ones for building I said was monastery for a 6. And then the other ones which are quite important is I've got blacksmith on 9 and market on 0. Now, there's a little bit that's important here. Market being hotkeyed is important. I'll just say that much. Whatever hotkey you want to use it for, not sure, but it's important. And the reason for that is it's an economic building that makes units. That makes workers, essentially, traders. So you always want to be producing for the most part. Workers when you can, villagers from your TC, fishing ships from your docks, and traders from your markets if you're doing trading or water. So having a hotkey handy to be able to do it as part of your cycle is really important, and it makes you or helps you avoid not producing. Having a button for your blacksmith, honestly, you don't need it. You don't need to press 9. And the reason for that is because we've got the F keys. So F1 was for all our military. F2 is for all our eco, which includes market, but also includes other stuff, which is why I don't recommend it as a hotkey for the market. And F3 is all your military. So this would be, military tech. So this would be, or technology. So this would be Blacksmith University, and then Civ-specific buildings also often come under that umbrella. So you can just press F3 and then get your upgrades. You don't need to press 9 or whatever. But I do recommend a button for a hotkey for the market. The other one, just to cover that briefly, is F2 for your eco buildings. I actually recommend using this button. If you need wheelbarrow, you can either, and a lot of pros do this even, you can like come to like, oh, this is my mill, and I'm going to press wheelbarrow. So I'm going to click the mill and press W. That's less efficient. F2W. You do have to tab through to get the ones you want, but they're all here, which is great. I need double broad axe. I need specialized pick, easy peasy. And yeah, you can use it for markets, but again, up to you. It wouldn't be the end of the world just to use F2 for markets, actually. It wouldn't be the end of the world, but I recommend using its own hotkey. If you have another TC, put it on the same hotkey. There's a little bit more manual work here, but I think it is best to do this. The manual work involved, so it's not going to go. Your vision's not going to go over, so you can just press 4 and I can press QQ. If I do that, it's going to produce 1 villager from each. It will balance out the production evenly, so that's really helpful having it on 1 key. What it won't do, or what you can't do, is do individualized... Wait, you can? Okay, I've just learned something. I've always had to do manual rally points by clicking. You can just tab to the one you want, and it will do their own rally points. Well, I just learned something. That's crazy. That is really cool, and I'm really pissed off the amount of times I've sent villages to the wrong fucking place. Okay, that's cool. Definitely not bitter. Definitely leave that in the video. Okay. Cool, lost my train of thought. The other things to keep in mind, just hotkeys generally. I think we talked about the grid, or the grid's kind of self-explanatory, but do use them all. The other thing for buildings is you've got the Q list, but then you've got the W list for the later buildings. These buildings come in feudal age, and then E for castle and R for imperial age, and then they still use the grid system. So you can see it's QWE across, but if I do Q, it's QWER. Production's all the same, so where they are is where the button's going to be. It's the same with units and abilities. So longbowmen have abilities palings. So all the abilities are going to start there, but you might have multiple, but yeah. The Q button is what you're going to press. Other ones that are useful, obviously tech move, A left click. S for stop. V is hold position, which is quite a handy one. You've got the different formations if you want a formations shuffle. Particularly for archers, you often want to put them in line formation, which is quite handy. So that's Z. Nice, easy to press. The other one is patrol, which is sometimes useful, particularly if you want units to be chilling somewhere, but not idle, or not count when you do select or idle. So you see that the spam didn't count there. And the other one is Garrison, which is F. So I told you to turn off right-click for Garrison. Normally what would happen is you would click on this, right-click on this, and it would Garrison. I have it off, so I have to press the F key and then left-click and then they'll Garrison. I find this so much better. And then F again to get out. Other hotkeys which are actually really important. I'll try to cover this quickly. It's a little bit complicated, but I'll try. is the hotkey to seek shelter. So G is all the villages you have selected, they'll seek shelter. Go to the nearest thing they can garrison in. Then if I go to the TC, main TC, I press 4. I've got 2 buttons to get them out. No, I've got 3 buttons to get them out. D is return to work. That means any that are in this building. Actually, put some in here. If I press C, everyone will go out. Everyone is garrison. So both these TCs go out. And they'll go back to where they were. If I press D, only the one I got selected will go out. So they'll go out. If I press D on this, they'll go out. That's the difference between C and D. The other one is F, which is ungarrison all units, but it's not a return to work command. It's an ungarrison command. So they'll go where you send them. So if I have it clicked over here and I press F, they'll go there. If I have it over here, they'll go over there. But if I just press D, they'll go back to work, which they didn't have a job, so they're just going to stop. If they were working, they'll go back to work. You're never going to get that to start, exactly how that works, but there's a lot of little micro tricks you can do with that, and that will become more clear when you start. But yeah, there's different things you can do. One good example is like if I want them to go on this tree, I can just like click the tree, press G, and then I can press C or D, and they'll come out the other side and go there. If I want them to go here, I can press over there, I can press F, and they'll go out that way. I've already explained it, don't worry too much about it. Cool. One of the other things I'll say is about, I covered exclusive control groups. I will cover the other option, which is if you don't have it exclusive, these guys can be all on 1, 2, and 3 together. The reason why I like exclusive is because you can easily overwrite or create new groups. Like I said with the archers, or like I did with the archers before, these guys are all 1, but we want to use the archers. Control click them, press 2, now they're 2 and these guys are still 1. So I can sort of, there's no needing to do any overriding or whatever. It's nice and easy to just split them up. It's simpler in the head, I think. But one of the ways that it's important to make this sort of thing work easily is whether you use Control or Shift with your modifiers when you're doing your groups. So Shift will add your selection to the group you select. So Shift 1 will add to 1. Control 1 makes a new 1. It overwrites any other units which are in 1. So currently these guys are in 1, these guys are in 1, these guys are in 2. If I select a spam and I go Control 1, that's going to be the only guys in 1. So these guys get kicked out. If I select these guys and go Control 1, it kicks them out. Okay? So on and so forth. But if I do Shift 1, it's going to add them. So if I select these guys and go Shift 1, now they're all 1. I press 1, and then we're away sailing. If I want them to join 2, Shift 2, they're all in 2. We go away laughing. I find that way a lot easier. It's also really good with reinforcements. So if I make some long, I've got some longbowmen down here. Like yada yada yada. We're chilling. And then I take my longbowman and I'm like, oh, he's got to be part of the gang. Shift 1, and now he's part of the crew. I don't have to. If I press Control there, then oh shit, he's by himself now. These guys lost their hotkey. 1. Shift select everybody. Control 1. No, huge waste of time. So that's control groups. I think now I've covered off everything that I can think. A couple little things which are useful tricks. One is making farms, especially as English. Farms, you can form 8 around a mill. The way to do this and do it cleanly, and you'll see pros or whatever players do it really, really fast, is you make the mill first. So you press QW, brings up mill, and you left click it. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to actually Shift Q all the farms around it. So if we could, I'm going to do it far away so they've got time to run. We do this, and then we go QA to get farms, and we're going to hold shift, and we're going to left click in the middle of the mill 8 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we're going to finally right click the mill, and then they're going to automatically do the mill. And like we said before, where they're going to mine or gather the closest food source, they're going to know to go and build. Well, in this case, actually, it's actually a build command. That's overcomplicating it. But regardless, they're going to know that they should go build the farms. Now, the reason we do the right click at the end, rather than just letting the shift click play out, is because if you do the right click, every time they build a farm, they'll leave one behind to gather. If we don't do that, so let's take another right, and we do the shift click, and we don't do the thing at the end, we don't right click at the end, we let the shift click play out, they're actually going to make all 8 farms, all 8 of them, before they start gathering, which is significantly more inefficient. So we're just not going to do that. Look at them. They're so stupid. So that's why we do it the first one. Trying to think of anything else. Oh, the Control F keys, etc. So Control F is select Foodville, and I hit space. Now I'll just do any random one. So it's really useful early game to go select one, but not very useful later because you don't know which ones it's going to pick. Control W to get Woodville. That one's really useful. Often, in case your Woodvilles are going to be the ones that are going to be building houses. So I often go Control W, and I press space to focus, and I go QQ. And then I shift right click back. Whoops. Shift right click back. And then that's easy building a house. And I go back to my army and I'm microing away. Yeah, I find that quite handy. Another one is just, yeah, making a lot of unit or production and stuff. You just hold shift. So WS for stables, for example. And then I just spam left click. It'll make a bunch in the area. And then from here, if I want to add them to the group, I got 2 ways. The easiest way, I think, double click. And then go shift 5. That'll add them to the group. We could just press F1 now and go control 5 or shift 5 and add them to the group. Make sure you don't press control 5 because then it will overwrite your other ones. But yeah, and then we select them all and we're going to redo our rally points. We're going to right click at the front and now we'll rally to the front. That's nice and easy. I'm sure there's other things I'm forgetting and I apologize for that. I'll see if I remember them before I post a video. Otherwise, I think that's everything I've covered. Sorry it was so long. I hope it was helpful. Yeah, let me know what you think. Any questions, let me know. Anything that's confusing, let me know. Otherwise, yeah, just hope it's helpful. And I'll catch you next one. Bye-bye.